From the potential of a police substation returning to Main Street Hyannis to the news of a pending lawsuit against federal and county government agencies that could be a game changer in the region's wastewater management efforts, there was no lack of fodder for our daily discussions on Barnstable This Morning this past week. We'll get to those topics in just a moment, but we begin this BTM Week in Review with a portion of our discussion with Town Manager John Klim on Monday, August 23rd. The subject was Chapter 40B, a state affordable housing statute that has generated noisy debate that continues to get noisier. Klim gave us a primer in how Chapter 40B works, why it's so contentious, and how it impacts affordable housing here in Barnstable.
Okay, Chapter 40B is also known as the anti-snob zoning law in Massachusetts. It was passed by our legislature in 1969, and it really is the preeminent tool that has been used since then to create affordable housing in Massachusetts. What it does in a nutshell is that it allows developers in communities that have less than 10% of their housing stock as affordable to approach the local zoning board of appeals and ask for a waiver of some of the more restrictive zoning ordinances that have been passed at the local level. It is the preeminent tool, but for Chapter 40B we would have very little affordable housing in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and so, but like other states, the creation of affordable housing has been, a controversial issue, and the message of Chapter 40B is that local communities, by preparing and then submitting an affordable housing plan to the state, should gain control of the process, so that you're encouraging the type of development that is complementary to the community and not letting individual developers take over the process.
Why then do many Chapter 40B projects seem to cause a stir more often than not?
Well, I think for two reasons. First of all, there have been over the decades some unscrupulous developers that have proposed developments that are not in keeping with the community character, and there has been that battle. And secondly, there is a faction in any community that does not want affordable housing built in their neighborhood, the so-called not in my backyard phenomena.
Yeah.
And so you have both of those at play. And a lot of times you'll have opposition to an affordable housing development, but after it's built, you see something quite differently.
If Chapter 40B didn't exist, then would there be any chance of the town achieving the 10% mandate?
Well, it would be very difficult, certainly with the underlying zoning. But if you look across the Commonwealth, there's been over 58,000 homes created for working and middle-class families in Massachusetts through the use of Chapter 40B. And so it's almost impossible to create affordable housing with the underlying zoning that exists in most communities. And so it is a tool that has been used that, but for it, we would be in a much more difficult situation right now.
On Tuesday, August 24th, our weekly conversation with Police Chief Paul McDonald focused on a question of whether or not the perception of crime in downtown Hyannis matches the day-to-day reality. The chief doesn't think so, but he did acknowledge that regardless of what's true, the police department needs to have a stronger presence downtown, and he believes that the return of a substation to Main Street may be the answer.
Right. Bad news, sells newspapers. Do we have some major incidents in Hyannis? Yes, of course we do. Hyannis is an urbanized area. But if you look at the numbers, and we look at the numbers every day, every week, every month, the Part 1 crimes are down, and they're down dramatically. But we still have this element out there. In the perception, whether it's crime or the perception of crime, the problem is still there. And we have to deal with the perception of downtown Hyannis, and the police department accepts full responsibility for this. We have dropped the ball to the extent that we have to put a much greater police presence on Main Street Hyannis. Main Street Hyannis is the economic engine that drives this town, drives Cape Cod, drives healthiest in Massachusetts, and we have to ensure that everyone down there is safe. And we have to come up with a plan to get police officers down there on Main Street Hyannis, and that's our responsibility.
How possible is that with the resources you have?
Well, we have to be creative. I mean, the town has done everything it can. Right now this year we're level funded. And I was amazed that we're able to level fund the police department from last year. These difficult economic times, but we can't use that as an excuse. We have to step up the plate and get it done. And right now we're currently working with the bid. We're currently working with the Chamber of Commerce. And what we would like to do is bring a substation back down to Main Street Hyannis. We lost the one on North Street last January. We'd like to put another one right down on Main Street Hyannis. But we need a building down there, and we need a parking area where we can at least put 4 to 6 crews down there, and we have a permanent police presence on Main Street.
The biggest story on Cape Cod this week was news of the Conservation Law Foundation's intentions to sue the EPA, the Cape Cod Commission, and the Barnstable County Commission for failing to properly regulate nitrogen loading in our coastal waters. While the legal action doesn't come as a big surprise, it is bound to make a big impact on the wastewater management debate here on the Cape. As for what kind of an impact it might have on the town of Barnstable, we sought answers from Town Council President Fred Chirigotis on Thursday, August 26th.
Well, clearly, I think the impetus for the CLF's action is continuing inability for all kinds of reasons to move forward. Although I'd have to say in the town of Barnstable we've been doing well, and many places are doing well, the question becomes, is anybody moving fast enough? And is the county or as a whole moving fast enough? And I think what CLF has identified is that we're in a very difficult situation primarily because of funding.
Yeah.
There's no question about whether or not we need to move forward and correct the wastewater problem that we have on Cape Cod. The question becomes, how should it be funded? And I think that CLF's action is probably the best way to get a larger regional solution to really what is a regional problem. So, I think that ultimately what happens out of it is we create or we identify more spread out funding sources. That's what I think ultimately happens. The problem becomes you lose control over the planning process and you lose control over the timing.
Later in the show, County Environmental Health Specialist and Barnstable Citizens Advisory Committee member Sue Rask joined us to explain the crux of the CLF's legal challenge.
The suit kind of speaks to the EPA not enforcing the Clean Water Act. And the Clean Water Act generally speaks to point source pollution, which are pipes, like from wastewater treatment plants, pipes into rivers, that kind of stuff. And the suit is arguing that septic systems which create nutrients should be viewed as point source polluters. And if that legally comes to pass, that the court rules that is a correct interpretation of the Clean Water Act, I mean, that has huge implications nationwide for every septic system anywhere in the country that is, causing nutrient pollution, whether it's nitrogen to marine waters or phosphorus to lakes.
How confident do you feel that the town of Barnstable is making enough progress to not find itself really behind the 8 ball when the full scope of this legal action really comes to light?
Well, I think Barnstable has done everything legally required of it. We completed our first facilities plan that culminated in 2005, and we're working our way along in the new comprehensive wastewater management plan. So, we've participated, we've put money into the Massachusetts Estuaries Project, a significant amount of money, to try to answer questions so that we can move forward. So I feel that Barnstable's acted in good faith. I mean, how that ultimately gets viewed legally, I have no idea, because the suit is not against the town, it's against the EPA.
Right. Remember, if you'd like to see these complete interviews, they're all available online. You can check them out in the town's video archives at town.barnstable.ma.us. Well, that's all for now. I'm Nick Cortese. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on Barnstable Today.